Hi folks, Dr. P here, and I'm going to try to figure out something that requires a bit of explanation. The question is, are hobby games more often than in the past being treated as toys rather than games? Which requires me to define toys and games and so forth. I will say preliminarily that party games and sometimes family games have been treated as toys much more often than hobby games, which I call semi-serious at least games. So let's try some definitions. A stock definition of games, puzzles, and toys from Adams and Rolling's Game Design Fundamentals is that games have rules and goals, puzzles have only goals, and toys have neither rules nor goals. Well, to me, that's not an adequate definition, as puzzles often have rules as well as goals. Moreover, that's not the defining characteristic of a puzzle, which I'll get to in a minute. And role-playing games, RPGs, have rules but often no specific goals, though the players usually create their own goals. So my definition would be, games have human or a programmed semblance of human active opposition. And there is no always correct solution. If there is an always correct solution, it's called a dominant strategy, which is a very bad thing if you're designing a game. Now, puzzles, on the other hand, have always correct solutions. Once you've figured it out, you can do it again and again and again, and it'll work. And they have only passive opposition, even if there are other players, if the players cannot provide direct opposition. This is characteristic of a lot of Euro-style board games. Toys have neither opposition nor solutions, which is inevitable because they have no goals. You do whatever you want with them. Although there are some corporate toys nowadays, for example, G.I. Joe, that have strongly associated stories, and as I understand it, kids tend to follow those stories rather than making up their own, what do we want to do with this? Puzzles are more popular than games. Why? You can't lose a puzzle, though you can quit. Now, I may be biased because I don't like puzzles. If I succeed, it's only what I ought to be doing. If I quit, it leaves a bad taste. Why bother then? And if I spend a vast amount of time trying to figure out a solution, why bother? If I succeed, I'll only feel that I did what I should do. It's a waste of time to me, in most cases. Now, most single-player and cooperative games are much more puzzle than game. It depends partly on the quality of the opposition, partly on how much randomness is there. Many puzzles have no randomness in them, which makes it easy to have a solution that you can reproduce again and again and again. Now, video games sometimes have a semblance of active opposition, but it's often a poor excuse for human opposition. Parallel competitions are actually puzzles rather than games. Think a hot dog eating contest. It is a competition, but there's no opposition. Think of Olympic swimming. Everybody's in their own lane. Yes, there's a little bit you can do to try to influence the mindset of the other people involved. I've already mentioned Euro-style tabletop games and single players and games in general. Now, frequently people don't focus on winning, but on what works and what doesn't. They're exploring the game to see how it works, and then they're done. Often this amounts to exploring the game to see what the solutions are. War games are often historically based, so a player can even play solo to learn more of the history. And solo war games are increasingly popular. Solo war games are puzzles. And what they're trying to do with a solo war game frequently is force you to follow the solution of history. This is something I don't do and I don't approve of, but it is what happens. It's simple to do. Of course, in games, some people devise their own goals, which we'll call implicit goals. Still, most things called tabletop or video games provide a goal, usually explicit, sometimes implicit, as with role-playing games. Now, it seems to me that today many people look at opposed games and at puzzles more as though they were toys. They're fascinated or enticed by the components more than by what actually happens, that is, how they're actually used or played. Presentation is more important than play. And the games themselves are played just 1 to 3 times, not more, most of the time, so that you can do your exploration, figure out the solutions, and then move on to the next game. What about thinking? Sometimes the players don't really want to have to think. This is much more common among hobby gamers than in the past, when Don't Make Me Think was largely confined to party games and some family games. So the solutions provide guidelines for what players do. In other words, players are looking for the solutions to the puzzle so they can follow it. This is the origin of the, quote, generally accepted move in this situation, unquote. That is, you want to follow a puzzle solution. And some players nowadays even get angry when someone else in a game for more than 2 players doesn't make the accepted play. So, is there an answer to my original question? Not a definitive one. I think the answer is yes, but I can't prove it. Thanks for listening.